Why would the Pope say, it's time for a new evangelization now? The church is that voice, like John the Baptist, that voice in the wilderness. It's saying things that nobody else is saying and hoping someone will hear. But for that voice to be heard, the Pope is reminding us, it has to be alive, it has to be enthusiastic, it has to be filled with faith. Why a new evangelization now? When he traveled to Scotland in September as part of his trip through the United Kingdom, he set the tone for his visit, and I think he really was setting the frame of reference for the new evangelization. He said, Catholic professionals, politicians, teachers should never lose sight of their calling to use their gifts, their talents, their experience at the service of the faith, engaging the contemporary society at every level. If you're looking for a why, it's because this society, the contemporary society, needs desperately to hear what those first disciples of Christ heard, that there's a reason to live, there's a way to live, there's a joy in living, there's a purpose in living, and that this life is only the beginning of a life that will go on forever. He highlighted what exactly the new evangelization entails. And this is a quote. I'm going to read it because he says so much better than I could what I'm trying to say. The evangelization of culture is all the more important in our times when a dictatorship of relativism threatens to obscure the unchanging truth about man's nature, his destiny, his ultimate good. Then the quote goes on. There are some who now seek to exclude religious belief from public discourse, to privatize it, or even to paint it as a threat to equality and liberty. And then the quote continues. Society needs today clear voices which propose our right to live not in a jungle of self-destructive arbitrary freedoms, but in a society which works for the true welfare of its citizens. What the Pope is saying is this is a time when some voices need to be heard to say there are markers in life. There are anchors in life that you can hold on to. There is a foundation for your decision on how you're going to live, what choices you're going to make, the difference between right and wrong. And as we undertake the new evangelization, we have to recognize the context of today. When our Holy Father was here on this campus, 3 years ago this coming April, 3 years ago next month, he gathered all of the bishops at the shrine in the crypt to speak to us. When he came onto campus here, there were thousands of you who mobbed that Pope-mobile. By the way, it gave the Secret Service apoplexy. That Pope-mobile came on to the campus, and they had everything chalked out where it was supposed to ride and where it was supposed to go. And the Pope says to his secretary, tell the driver to pull over to the curb. You were there, Susan. And then he says to Georg, his secretary, lower the window. And this inch-thick bulletproof glass window goes down. And the Pope is reaching out the window, shaking hands with as many of you as he could get near. And Secret Service are running alongside the vehicle and glaring at his secretary. I just shrunk back and I'm not here. But he went on to say, when he met with all of the bishops, before you can begin to plant the seed of the gospel, there are some barriers you have to get over. And he named 3 of them. The first one, he said, is materialism. And he pointed out the subtle influence of materialism, which can all too easily focus attention on the goods of this life at the expense of eternal life. Isn't that why we do Lent? Isn't that why, I'm not going to ask you what you've given up for Lent, although someone asked me that the other day in front of other people. We're so used to it. We're just so used to saying it's Lent. You're supposed to do something that reminds all of us that, you know, there is more to this. I think it's really very stunning when so many people come for ashes. I mean, we're talking about thousands and thousands and thousands of people coming for ashes. And when the ash is put on their forehead, they're told, remember, you're dust. And unto dust you're going to return. I think Lent is a reminder to all of us, look, there's more to this than just this material world, as important as this world is. And I don't want to denigrate it. I love climate control. And I love being able to have all of the comforts that are a part of this world. But what the Pope was reminding us is that's not everything. I always remembered the response to that commercial that was on years ago on television. It was a beer commercial. Now they have fewer of them. Not that there's less beer, but there are just fewer commercials. But it showed these 2 people sitting on the steps of what looked like a cottage looking out over this lake, and they're holding their bottle of beer. And the one says, it doesn't get any better than this. And I'm thinking, it's sure better. It's sure better. And that's what the Pope is saying. You have to get over that hurdle of materialism. There's nothing wrong with enjoying even a beer, provided you're of age. But it's not the end of everything. And that's what the Pope was talking about when he said materialism. But then he went on to say, there's also, and this is a quote, while it is true that this country is marked by a genuine religious spirit, and I believe that's true, the subtle influence of secularism can nevertheless color the way that we allow faith to influence our behavior. In other words, we begin to think, as we're sometimes told, that there's really only one lens through which to see life, and that's the secular lens. Religion is something very private. It's something you should keep to yourself, and your religious values shouldn't impact on the life, the society, the culture, the world around you. And the Pope is saying secularism is one of the hurdles you have to get over. We, I think, need to be very much aware of that, because the challenges today of secularism are becoming so pronounced that faith-based institutions, religious-based institutions, healthcare, social service, even education, are finding themselves now greatly threatened. Our ability to do the things that we normally have done in our society are being greatly challenged. One simple example of a secular view of itself as the only view. What I like to think of is that arrogant claim of secularism to be the only way to see life. In Connecticut, there is already legislation that defines what procedures are to be used in a hospital emergency room when dealing with specific trauma. It's not what the doctors or the hospitals or healthcare procedures require. It's what the politicians have decided should be, in their mind, the approach that would exclude then the intervention of any religious faith. These are not minor things. I think this is what our Holy Father is concerned about when he says to us, the hurdle of secularism is something that we have to face. The third one, he says, in a society which values personal freedom, and that's a wonderful thing, and autonomy, and that's also a very good thing, it's easy to lose sight of our dependence on others and our responsibilities that we bear towards them. Remember, no man is an island, and it's true. None of us stand alone. We live in a whole maze of relationships, wonderful relationships. They begin with our name. That's why we have a first name and a second name, a first name and a family name. First name defines who I am. Family name defines that first group that I'm related to. And then we start adding other names and titles. Eventually, we even begin to claim that we're an alumnus or an alumna of a university. That's also part of my family. We might even claim a political party as a part of our growing web of relationships. What the Holy Father is saying is, no one lives alone. We are related, we're interrelated, and we have obligations one to another. Today, that takes form in the challenges to religious liberty that we as free citizens in this wonderful democracy are facing. I'll give you one example of the concern that we have and why we need to be very alert to this individualism that is at the very heart of what the Pope describes as that dictatorship of relativism. Once it's decided that there are no objective norms, there are no objective criteria for deciding things, what's right, what's wrong, even for the naming of things, then it's just the majority wins. 51% of the vote can determine reality. Or if you can't get 51 and you can get bigger guns, then you get to determine reality. And what the Pope is talking about, what the Church is talking about, what history is talking about, is there's more to defining our relationships. There's more to defining reality than just what comes out of our will. I'll give you an example. We have just had an experience in the District of Columbia and more recently in the state of Maryland, the discussion about redefining marriage. To redefine, to change the basic definition of marriage and make it be something other than what humanity has understood marriage to be over every culture and going back over eons. The word marriage describes the commitment of a man and a woman to come together for life with the possibility of generating and educating children. That's what people have understood by the word marriage. Some people over the ages have come together in a variety of ways, physical, financial, social, but these various unions have other names to identify them, to recognize them. Domestic or civil unions, legally domiciled adults, these can all describe other ways in which people may choose to share their affection, their wealth, their time.